It's been smooth this week on that front. Everyone seems to have come through, apart from the usual few bruises here and there. Nothing of note to report really. So now we're in a good place.
Can you give us any guide on maybe how many changes you're looking at tomorrow?
Yeah. So look, I think that's always the balance, isn't it, of friendlies, if you want to put it like that. And look, we are trying to build a squad conscious of potentially 4 games in June. Obviously not entirely sure what way that's going to materialise. So Stephen's always very firm on caps aren't given out, and I very much feel that way as well. You have to earn them, but equally you have to reward players that have been very professional around maybe not being selected, not coming into the game, and we understand that disappointment. So yeah. Look, there will be changes, I think, but the team itself hasn't been selected yet.
Things are looking really good at the moment, but can I take you back a year to the Luxembourg game, the defeat, the empty stadium, the sort of gloom and doom? How were you and Stephen feeling at that time, and can you sort of compare and contrast?
Yeah, not as good as we're feeling now, funny enough. They were tough times, there's no doubt about it. You look back at the games, which we always analyse, we go back, you see the empty stadiums, as you've mentioned. They weren't particularly nice times anyway for football people. But when we look at that day, that was obviously a really poor day at the office. We said that at the time, and it doesn't feel any different now. I think the obvious comparisons now will be made towards Lithuania, who we face tomorrow evening, and it's about the mentality of the players. I don't think it's a case of underestimating opposition. I don't think that's ever really been a case for Irish teams, if I'm being entirely honest. And it certainly wouldn't be from our part. Players be made aware of strengths and weaknesses. They'd be treated the exact same respect that we gave Belgium in our analysis of them. And obviously we're going into the game looking to play the way we have been playing, play with confidence, play with a verve, excite the fans, and ultimately win the game.
It seems like you've given up all your media work. Why is that? Why are you looking differently at this sort of second phase?
I did it quite a while ago. This is a job that I love. I have an unbelievable amount of passion for. I don't see it as a job really. And my time was getting taken up in areas that I wasn't as passionate about. I'm very, very fortunate to be in this position and have the input that I do have, and have that working relationship with Steve, and that he allows me to crack on and do what I do, and we work very much as a team, and it's, like I said, it's something I'm very, very passionate about. And when I sat down and reflected on things and my time management and how I want to evolve away from what I actually do in here, and how I spend time watching our players and doing the normal due diligence, I suppose, I want to evolve a little bit more and spend more time to become a better coach, better assistant, and evolve myself in that regard, rather than having to go to certain games in a different capacity.
Cheers, thank you.
Tony?
Hi Keith, how are you?
Hey Tony, how you doing?
Good, thanks. Keith, in the 18 months or whatever, you haven't been at a press conference. Is this a change of policy on Stephen's behalf or your behalf?
I said initially I certainly didn't want to, if I'm being entirely honest. I didn't feel I needed to, and I was quite comfortable with that. And this has only come about really yesterday, the day before, and Stephen just mentioned to me, and I said no problem. He obviously has to do quite a lot, as you're all aware of. And yeah, I don't know. It's not a policy we've sat down and spoken about. Obviously, we work very closely together, and it's something Stephen mentioned over the weekend, and I've obviously got no issues at all. No problems doing it.
Because you're an excellent communicator, and it's good for us, I guess, to have another view of inside the team. So is it something in the future you think you might be doing?
I'm not sure really. Like I said, we haven't sat down and devised a plan. It's not as pivotal as other aspects of my job, if I'm being entirely honest. I'm not thinking about the session that we're going to be taking in half an hour or so. So it's basically whatever the manager wants. It's only like that's basically, if I can relieve him of any of that burden at times, and in terms of the time management, if he has to prioritise certain aspects of his job, that's ultimately what I'm here to do. There's a clue in my job title. I'm an assistant, so I'll try and do that where I can.
But having said all that, you did come out and very passionately support Stephen. Maybe when things looked a bit rough, there was a lot of criticism. Did you feel that was necessary at that time because maybe his job was in doubt?
I felt it was necessary that you touched on it, that there was a different voice maybe, because Stephen's at the front a lot, obviously during that time, and obviously I've touched on it already, we're in this together, and he's always been the focal point of having to face tough questions when things weren't going particularly well, and we were during a bit of a tough period, obviously. So yeah, during that time I did feel it was important. You know, it wasn't what I did. I did say it to Stephen, obviously, and if he didn't think it was a good idea, obviously I wouldn't have done that. But I think at the time I was very comfortable where we were, and the process, I suppose, that was in place, and the building we were trying to do, and rebuilding that we were trying to do with the squad, and how we were trying to get the team to play. So yeah, I suppose that's where it came from, in terms of, even though the results hadn't been amazing to that point, I did feel like we were in a good place, and it was coming. I could feel it, I could sense it. You see it every time you go onto the training pitch, and with the players that we've got, such a humble, ambitious group of players that we have, I just felt that was probably it. It just needed a different voice at the time.
But if the results didn't turn around, surely the manager's position was in doubt.
I think football being football, Tony, it's always result dependent, isn't it? And then you're always beholden to the powers that be. You know, we're not playing, it's not development football, it's, you know, we're in big boys football here, so that's the nature of the business, that ultimately if results didn't come, you know, then decisions have to be made, and like I said, we felt we were in a good place, even though the results hadn't been good. We were comfortable with what we were putting in place, and the results did come.
And briefly, what was the key element of the improvement?
It's hard to put an exact. I know the lads have spoken last week. I've heard little bits and bobs about the summer trip that we got to spend time together. You know, very, very difficult times, as we all know, during the pandemic, to try and create a team environment in such difficult circumstances, even back at the hotel when players weren't allowed in rooms together, and it's a big part of what we do. And obviously introducing so many, not so much young players, but players full stop into the squad, and that takes time to come together, both socially and also in terms of football and what you're trying to do. So summer started it, and I think over the autumn then it certainly went into took steps forward, major steps forward.
Deeney, please.
Just go back to that time when the results weren't good, so whenever Stephen came in to see us, he was always very polished and confident. What was he like away from the limelight?
Always very composed, always very much sticking to the principles and the belief that he has in what the players are capable of achieving. Of course, we make little tweaks here and there, but yeah, he's a very strong individual, and I thought he dealt with it remarkably well, because, like I've said, there were some obviously not very nice days that we had to endure. You've got to take it on the chin. I say to him quite often about when I go back into my local butchers, they're quick to tell me about what we should and shouldn't be doing, and sometimes it's not particularly pleasant. But no, during that process, I thought he stood really firm. Very, very easy, I would imagine, as the manager, to maybe take a step back, to sacrifice maybe some of your values, your principles for a short-term view. But he stood by it, and obviously I was in full support of him.
Can I just ask, you played in an Ireland team that had a very definite way of playing and had success in that way. How does that compare with the way Stephen's trying to do things now?
Yeah, I would say very different. Very different. The Ireland team that I played in was very well organised, very difficult to break down. The main focus was what we did without the ball, I would say, and then there was a big reliance on the technically best players in the team, the ones that had the most ability in an attacking sense, obviously. So it was based around that. The manager that probably didn't have enough belief in maybe what we could do, or maybe was stuck in the way that he really seen the game played and the way he'd always coached the game. Stephen, obviously, and myself included, see it differently, and we've obviously tried to take the team in a slightly different direction.
Joe, and then Gavin to end the live section, please.
Hey, pal.
John was just talking there about how important momentum is in soccer and sport in general. Looking ahead to the Nations League and the importance of maintaining the momentum going into that, is tomorrow's a must-win game?
Tomorrow's very important to continue the confidence that has become very, very apparent in the players and how they've approached games regardless of the opposition. It's all about building. The first matches last week was probably along those lines, that we don't just want to, you know, go back. We need to continue to take a step forward as a group in every department. And we built on that all last week. Last week's training sessions were very, very good, and in some aspects you're slightly worried that it's maybe gone a little too well going into games, ironically. So now going in tomorrow, it's very much looking towards the summer. Players will be given opportunities that we feel they deserve, and we just want to continue the good work.
Just a word on that, shows he's in unbelievable form at the moment. As things stand, it's likely to be playing championship football next season. What you've seen of him, do you think he's maybe a Premier League footballer?
It shows he's capable of doing whatever he wants to do, I'm being honest. We've watched him a lot at Rotherham. I've got friends that coach at Rotherham, so I've known about Josie for a long time. And it's been well documented at this stage that using in slightly different ways and attacking right wing back for them. His contract situation, I'm not entirely sure, but I'm sure Rotherham will be worried about next season, regardless of whether they go up or stay in League One, because he's certainly shone for us, hasn't he? He's been a breath of fresh air on the pitch, off the pitch. As a human being, he's quite a special young man, and we're delighted to have him in and delighted to see him flourish.
Gavin?
Hi Keith. When you've scored early against lower-ranked opposition, it's generally gone well, like the way to Azerbaijan and home to get there. When you haven't got that early goal after a good start, it's less so. I'm thinking at home to Azerbaijan. Is that something that the team still has to prove, that if the early goal doesn't come, you can still play your football and you can impose yourself on it?
Yeah, I think it's important because it's very difficult to gauge exactly how games are going to materialise. You're right, we have to do it on Saturday. You know, you go goal down, that's not in the plan, obviously it's not in the script, but it's how you react to that, and it's obviously in a different way to what you're alluding to, but it's a reaction, it's not a panic. We have to stick to the way we're trying to play, and then if needs be, then we try and get a message on at some stage to maybe tweak something that they've done differently, we would like to improve on, we need a little bit more. Even on Saturday, I thought at times we forced it a little bit when we didn't need to, even against top opposition. We maybe picked the wrong pass, the wrong selection, so yeah, it's very much sticking to the game plan and obviously being respectful of them, that at times they are very much going to frustrate us and potentially drop off. We'll see what way they start the game. So yeah, it's managing the game, I think, will be key, and not deviating away from what we're kind of put in place to try and pitch what we've already shown them on Lithuania.
Okay, we're moving to the embargoed section now. I am wary that the live section dragged on for longer than it should, so we'll do 10 minutes in the embargoed section to compensate for that. Neil, if you want to get started, please.
Hi Keith.
Yeah.
Can you talk a bit about how and when you kind of struck up the relationship with Stephen, and you know, just how it kind of developed from there?
Yeah, I didn't know Stephen personally. We met him at a couple of Ireland games before I became the assistant for the 21s. Conversations at Ireland games. Nothing major, and then just basically a phone call. So would I be interested in just meeting up for a coffee, and we spent 4 hours together just chatting around football. And
Was he there at the time?
he was, yeah, he was on the time. So it basically materialised from that, out of the blue, and then struck up, you know, a good relationship pretty much straight away in terms of, I suppose, our values on football and Irish football in particular, and then off the back of that, he asked me to come involved with the 21s, which I was obviously delighted to do, and that's basically on from there.
And sorry, finally, even within Ireland, sometimes there can be a snobbery within football circles towards the League of Ireland. Now, clearly results didn't go well at the start of the round, but do you get a sense of that, because you weren't someone who came through the League of Ireland system, you went to England early age. Is that something you're kind of conscious of, or you think exists?
Snobbery from who?
From within Irish football circles, not associated with the League of Ireland. So maybe some of the question marks being expressed over him, or because he came from the League of Ireland.
Okay. Yeah, no, I think it's probably fair. Yeah, I think there's snobbery in football, full stop, if I'm being honest. You know, when I played at Premier League club, they won't watch League One games, some players, I think that's true of football, it's not just in Ireland. I think that would have been the obvious one initially taken over. Yeah, it's probably a little bit accurate in terms of that snobbery does exist within football, full stop, not just our football.
Thank you.
Mark?
Would you like to play in Stephen Kenny or anything?
Yes, I would have. Not sure he would have selected me. But yeah, I would have. Look, a lot of his beliefs very much intertwine with my beliefs and how the game should be played, and coaches I've worked for in terms of what I believed in, maybe what I haven't believed in that hasn't particularly worked well. So the short answer is yes, I would have. We look at our squad obviously in terms of trying to find ways to play that suit our players, and hopefully we're starting to get there with that. But yeah, I think I would have enjoyed it.
Yeah, great atmosphere Saturday, and you've played in front of full houses in Croke Park and so on. What was it like, Luxembourg and all those games, empty stadiums? What was that?
Yeah, not just for us, like for full stop throughout football, it just wasn't a nice time. I going to games in England and just, it was a form of football. I said it, and I stand by that. A lot of respect for the players, that they managed to keep a level of intensity that was still competitive, still trying to do the right things, but ultimately on Saturday, if that was an empty stadium, I don't think we would have got the level of game that we got with even a half full stadium. So yeah, it was very, very difficult during those times to try and get through, and obviously personally it wasn't very nice. You know, it was such a proud moment for me to be given this role in the first place, and then to do it in empty stadiums is not obviously what you would anticipate. So it's nice to get back to normality.
Dan, well, I'm conscious we've got a few people to get around, so if you just, yeah, that'd be great.
I'm just wondering how John Eustace has slotted into the sort of staff dynamic across the last week, and just generally across the whole time, well documented, there's been changes to staff along the way. Has that been unsettling in terms of sort of the management team, or a little bit of disruption at times, and then sort of trying to regain that sort of understanding between the top team and such?
I think initially it's probably not ideal. For me personally, it's not ideal. Like, you build up working relationships with people, it's the same in every walk of life, and then you have a personal relationship as well, and it's obviously initially it's a disappointment when people leave the setup, but football being football, you have to move on quite quickly. And John's come in and settled in very, very well. I played with John a long time ago, and I had a loan move at Stoke, so I knew him but didn't really know him because we hadn't really connected on since, to be honest, in terms of certainly on a personal level. Played against each other a few times, but nothing major. But from a coaching capacity, he's come in and slotted in seamlessly into the group. He's a very humble fella. He gets on well with Stephen already. The connection that we have in terms of that will grow. It can't instantly happen in terms of, you know, the levels you want to get to. You need to find out about your strengths, weaknesses, etc. He's come in quite late into the camp in terms of it's impossible to know everything about all of our players, how we've played in this game and in that game. But as a first week goes, I don't think it could have gone much better. I touched on it before in terms of the training week. We were very, very content with it, and sometimes, not so much when I was a player, you want it to just go smooth, but when you're on this side, I think maybe you need a few more problems in training to fix and maybe show the players, but it went really well, and he was a big part in the preparations for last week. He slotted in brilliantly, and the lads have really taken to him, and he produced a good song as well, which is always nice.
What was it?
It was Wonderwall.
Aidan?
Vicky,
Hey.
I know, conscious your focus is on Lithuania, but there's other games tomorrow. If your counterpart in North Macedonia rang you looking for advice, what would you say? Are Portugal beatable, and what do they need to do maybe that you didn't do apart from the obvious?
Yeah, well, they are beatable. Yeah, there's no doubt about it. I'm not quite sure what happened with their team selection the weekend. I just didn't see players missing. I'm not quite sure what happened, but North Macedonia are on a pretty good run themselves over recent years, and they're producing some real quality results. But in terms of Portugal, look, we had our game plan going on. It was slightly different to the way we'd set up previously. It was away from home. It was a mid to high block rather than pressing aggressively consistently, and was looking to exploit spaces that we felt we could expose in their back line. And we did that on numerous occasions over there. We just couldn't really finish those attacks off. And then at home, we added a layer of aggression onto it. Being at home, we wanted to take a further step forward. I felt we did that, and probably edged it on the evening. So yeah, they're not an unbreakable force. We faced two really tough teams in the group, obviously, and Portugal have got some seriously talented individuals. Maybe collectively isn't always in sync.
Ed?
Can you carry on?
Yeah.
Just a quick one. terms of whenever we're talking to the players, we talk about how Stephen always builds their confidence. You know, he's built up a great relationship with them. Just in terms of when it comes to criticising players for when things go wrong, is there a stark variation between international level and club level that you almost have to tread softly at international level, or can you still get those, you know, can you still be as harsh, or does it always need to
Got to
be?
gauge. Obviously, Stephen's got a lot of experience, and I think the big difference between club and country is, you know, if anything happens on Tuesday evening, you know, I don't think you can be too critical, because that's going to be the way it's left for a few months. Whereas at a club level, you'd be able to then have the next conversation 2 days later. So it's very, very different to club level. We constantly want to take a step forwards as a group. We've got a group that are receptive to constructive criticism, whether it be in a group format or one-to-one or unit meetings, where it's just defenders bringing them in to show them certain clips of where we feel they might need to be better, and that goes throughout the squad, and Stephen gauges that really well.
Michael?
Thank you.
Yeah, Michael, go on.
Just on Saturday, Stephen was talking about asking players to raise their levels for this level. Is that purely psychological? Are you working on that, and how much further does that have to go in terms of that kind of development?
I don't think it's just psychological. I think it's something we have to do. We have to be collectively brilliant, I would say. I think in every aspect of the game, whether it's the basics of the game, that we've said this to the players, we're lucky that we know they will do the basics, we know they will do the hard work, we just need to challenge that in the right way. We know the endeavour will be there, and it's a real collective, whether that's how we win the ball back, how we build in terms of the positions we ask the players to take up. It might be an unselfish position for the first phase of how we build from the back, and then they get involved in the second phase. But no, it's not psychological. I think, you know, there's no getting away from it. Collectively we have to produce it. It can't be done in an individual fashion. It's not the way we work anyway, but it's certainly not what we would expect from the players.
Philip and then Paul to finish.
Hi Keane, good to see you again. There's been 3 high profile sort of appointments for the number 3 position. Damien Duff got basically Anthony Barry got on basically a lot of credit. John Eustace, you've been the constant there as number 2. Do you kind of feel from the outside that maybe you have been overlooked a little bit?
No, not really. Not really. I think the way Stephen works, it's collaborative. You know, he wants staff members to come in and slot in straight away and bring what they have. You know, it's bringing the knowledge they have, the experiences they have. And I think you have to then recognise as the manager, the head coach, what you delegate, who does what, and the people you've mentioned have all got really, really good qualities. And you're right, I've obviously been that constant, and I've adapted around certain coaches in terms of doing certain aspects of it. But regardless of who it is, obviously it's been consistent in terms of myself and Stephen, so I don't look overlooked. No.
Paul to finish.
Hi Keith. Sorry for being late.
That's alright.
Keith, when you took the job, Roy Keane was fairly critical of your knowledge of football, I guess. I think he called you a spoofer, but it was actually a bit more of a loaded word than that. Did that affect your dealings with the players at all? Obviously some of them had played under Roy, and you know, what did you make of those comments, and did you think it was a reflection on what you had said about him when you were in the media before?
Yeah, you might have to ask him why, but in terms of how it affected me, it didn't affect me in the slightest. I touched on it before you got here, about how passionate that I am about this role. My conscience would be very, very clean in terms of what I put into it, because apart from family life, it's actually the only thing I care about in terms of making this team better, in terms of making Irish football better, in terms of giving us a team that we're proud to watch. I've obviously been a fan, I've been a player. It's my only team, it's the only team I care about. So no, it didn't affect me. I think when you go into a new job, players pretty quickly suss you out if you're not up to the level. So in terms of the preparation going into it, was obviously, you know, of a high level.
In a way, it kind of summed up the differences between the last regime and this one, didn't it? I mean, you know, there's different philosophy, different outlook.
Well, look, in terms of previous regimes, obviously that was their bag. You know, I was very much either a fan at that stage, which I was, and travelled to Europe as a fan, or a player in a certain period, and before that very much a fan again. So it's I was there back. This is our regime, and this is how we see fit to put things into place, and hopefully we can just continue to work and continue building and keep that momentum going.
One last one from Gavin.
Keith, just on Troy Parrott, consider his recent form, and he's only like, 3 of his last 4 caps have been just like in injury time for you guys. Has he earned the right from training and Kid Don's form to start tomorrow?
Troy's been flying in training. There's been a noticeable difference, I would say, in Troy between this camp and the last camp. You sometimes forget how young Troy is, and I had a lot of conversations with Troy. I've got a really good relationship with him around all aspects of being a footballer and the different avenues you're going to have to take, and at times everything's not going to go to plan for you. And I think up until a certain point in Troy's career, he was just on that upward trajectory. And then obviously a couple of long moves, but they are invaluable experience, absolutely invaluable. And even at MK Dons during that spell where he was maybe a little bit out of the team, he pressed the reset button and just started to work hard. And I think he's got his rewards from that by his club manager. And from what we've seen this week, he's been really, really sharp. So there would be absolutely no qualms about Troy being involved tomorrow. We've got a lot of belief in him in terms of what he's capable of, and he's in a good place.